Oh, Carol, am I glad to see you. I can't do a thing with my nails lately.
Will you just sit down in that chair and let's see what we can do for you? So, how's work?
Oh, all right, I guess.
Is there something wrong?
Well, it's just that Betty, my coworker I told you about last time, she got another raise. Passed me right over. I don't get it. I've been there longer, I work hard, and I hardly ever complain. Here's a good one. Alien explodes after eating cheeseburger.
The things they plant in those tabloids, I don't know.
Well, you won't find it in here, but I have it on good authority that Jim and Tanya Peterson are getting a divorce.
Oh no, that's so sad.
Seems that Jim couldn't stand her cooking and came right out and told her so. She was so mad, she took a whole bowl of tuna noodle casserole and dumped it over his head. He was furious. He even called the sheriff and wanted to press assault charges. The sheriff said there was no law against assault with a deadly noodle.
Hey, you and Harold always put in such a nice garden every summer. You doing anything different this year?
Well, we've talked about several organic varieties. Harold found a really sweet variety of carrot he'd like to try.
Fresh produce from the garden all summer long is wonderful.
It sure is. That reminds me of my neighbor, Jack Thomas. He puts in a garden too, but he doesn't know enough to separate his squash from his cucumbers. Comes up with the strangest shaped vegetables. He doesn't water enough either. He's so pathetic, he'll never win a prize at the county fair. You're sure quiet. Is anything wrong?
No, I'm fine.
Got your mind on something else?
Well, yes, actually I do.
I'm all ears. I love to hear stories about other people.
That's exactly what I've been thinking.
What do you mean?
Well, it's just that
Go ahead. Tell me what's on your mind.
I just want you to know that every time you come into my shop and sit in that chair, I pray for you.
You what?
I pray for you.
You what? Really?
I pray for everybody that comes into my shop.
You do? Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Are you praying for me right now?
As a matter of fact, I am.
What are you praying about?
Oh, this and that.
Come on, you can tell me.
I don't usually tell people what I've been praying about.
I can't believe you pray for someone and then you won't even tell what you're praying for.
I'm not sure you want to know.
Why? Did I do something bad? This is ridiculous. Just tell me.
I was just praying that you would see how hurt people can be when we gossip about them.
What's so wrong with telling a story here and there?
I know, Lorraine, but words can really hurt people, and that's why I didn't want to tell you.
You know I didn't mean any harm.
The truth is, I hear enough from the people that come into my shop that I have to be very careful that I don't spread gossip myself. Because, you know, someone once told me something. Gossip is confessing other people's sins.
Oh, that's a good one. I've got to remember that one. Gossip is confessing other people's sins.
Well, how about your coworker?
Betty?
I'll bet she's a hard worker.
She is.
Well, maybe that's part of the reason she got that raise. And you know, Jim, I bet you he's very sorry he said those hurtful words to his wife. You know, I wonder if Tanya couldn't use somebody to help her learn some tips about cooking.
Oh, I could show her a thing or two.
I bet you could. What about Jack?
What about him?
Do you think you could send Harold over to his yard to teach him how to plant his vegetables?
Yeah, we wouldn't want any more mutant squash, would we? Oh, sorry, Carol. Old habits die hard.
Well, look, God has given you such tremendous talent. It's so exciting to think of all the things you could do to help people.
Really?
Really. Let me see. Oh, okay.
See, Carol, I'm really grateful for your prayers. You're not going to stop, are you?
No, Lorraine. As long as I have breath in my body and good friends like you coming through that door, I'm going to keep praying for you.
Let the words of my mouth, the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, the opening hymn that we sang today was all about the seed and the sower. And the hymn that we just sang now before the sermon was about the sower and the seed. The sermon ain't going to be about that. Pastor Bud was at the men's Bible study on Thursday morning when they discussed the text for the following Sunday, and when they read the parable of the sower, Pastor Bud said, "I bet Chuck's not going to use that." And he was right. I've used that so many times, 54 years of ministry, and I've talked about that parable so many times, and this is a parable season. There'll be another parable next week. So I thought it'd be good to have something besides something you've heard so many times. Now, if you haven't heard it, come back in 3 years, because that text comes around again in 3 years in the American Lutheran Church. So the basis for my message today is the second lesson that was read by Denise today from the book of Romans. So instead of using the gospel, I'm going to use Romans. Do you mind? You don't mind. That's good. That's good that you don't mind, because that's the word I'm going to use to talk about today, the word mind. The word mind. Apostle Paul uses that several times in that second reading that was used today. That word mind is a word that has so many different connotations as far as the English language is concerned. It's both a noun and a verb. In today's lesson, it is basically a noun. But it deals with the mind, the head, the setting up there. But it's also a verb of action. Let me give you some examples about how we use the word mind and how confusing that can be. You can hear the phrase, "Who's going to mind the store today?" What does that mean? Who's going to think about the store? Who's going to take care of the store? Yeah, that's usually what it means. And then when it comes to a parent and their child that's going to be taken care of by a babysitter, and says to the child, "Be sure you mind the babysitter." Does that mean to take care of the babysitter? Or to think about the babysitter? It means to be obedient to the babysitter. So many terms. How many of you use the terms, "I don't mind"? What does that mean? I don't think? It means maybe I don't care about this or that. How about never mind? I bet we've all used that when somebody said to us to do something and we say, "Never mind." Does that mean never am I obedient? Never do I take care of something? Or just forget it? We could use several more definitions of that. How about I have half a mind to do this or that? That's better than a quarter of a mind or a third of a mind. When it comes to talking about things of the mind, I like to go back to some of the stuff that Norman Vincent Peale has written over the years. One of his books is Enthusiasm Makes the Difference. In that book, he writes about a woman who heard him speak at a lecture time, and afterwards she got a hold of Norman Vincent Peale and said, you know, I wish my husband could talk to you because he's doing a terrible job at his work. He just can't seem to do it right. And so that man came to Peale many times. She set up appointments for her husband. And Peale found out that this man had a common phrase. I have half a mind to do this or do that. And he used it over and over. And finally, Peale told him, I know what your problem is. You're a half-minder. No one has ever been successful with using just half a mind. A half a mind isn't enough. When you think of the mind, we think of the brain, not so much the heart. We think about thoughts and attitudes, and certainly I think about our son Scott as far as using his head as far as some of the things that he does. The business of using the head. The great commandment, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. To use our head and not just our emotion. Certainly there are times when those of us in the mainline Protestantism should probably use more enthusiasm and emotions in our worship. But we shouldn't base our relationships strictly with feelings. Lots of marriages start because of emotions, because of feelings. In the end, when those feelings, those emotions change. I've always counseled couples when I'm preparing to do a wedding for them that love is not just an emotion or a feeling. Love is a decision. Love is using your head as well. Marriages mostly last because people decide to make it last. Set their minds to that particular fact in life. Like I said, the theme for the Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 8 today is the mind. And the mind is complicated. More illnesses are caused because of the mind than because of our physical ailments in our bodies. We call that, and I think you know the word, psychosomatic. Most illnesses, more than 50%, are psychosomatic. Surgery, drugs can't take care of that. We need to get the mind working in the way it is supposed to work. Power of positive thinking. Sometimes think that's a theme that's too shallow. But I don't think so because I think that Peale and Schuller have helped more people because of helping with their minds than with the physical ailments that we have. Education is an effort to enhance the mind. It's important to have a good GPA. And the elder son of my son, Scott, is working on his master's in philosophy. And that has a lot to do with the mind. And he just has to have his thesis before he gets that degree. We just got word this past week, our granddaughter in Denver, she's going to be a senior in high school this fall. She took the SAT test and had a perfect score. That doesn't happen very often. Using the mind. And Apostle Paul, like I said, uses that term several times. And what a difference it makes when a person uses our minds in the right way. To focus on the positive and not the negative. To be an optimist rather than a pessimist. Now, this is not the football season. It starts with the training in the latter part of this month. But I want to give you a football story, okay? And it's not about the Green Bay Packers. It's about the Arizona Rattlers. Have you heard of them? Not many people follow the Rattlers. They just finished their season. Their last game was played a week ago yesterday. Played in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, in the indoor Football League, and this is the first year that the Arizona Rattlers have been in that league. And for the last 6 years, Sioux Falls has won that championship. Now, if you're from South Dakota, you're probably going to be disappointed with what I tell you, because Sioux Falls got whipped last week, the first season that the Rattlers were in that particular league. And Sioux Falls was a team that scored point after point after point all year long. They only lost 2 games all season. The Arizona Rattlers lost 4 of their first 8 games, and they were 4-4. And they finished the season with only losing 4 games. In an article in the Arizona Republic, the week before the championship game, these are the words. The Rattlers' defense has improved since the start of the season, and defensive end Chris Mallister says it has a lot to do with mindset. It has a lot to do with mindset. We are playing with a lot more confidence. The Rattlers held this high-scoring Sioux Falls team to a total of 5 net yards in the first half. Their mindset won that game. So I repeat the words from Romans from Paul. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on things of the Spirit. To set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. We need to get that image. And we need to get it with a definition of spirit. Of course, it's the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God. Is God with us? God in us. And it's us relying on God directing us in what we do. The flesh, to set our minds on the flesh, is that we're going to go it alone. We're going to do it ourselves. Not needing or wanting what God has to give and directing us. Goes along with the gospel last Sunday when Jesus says, come unto me, all you who are labor and are under labor, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Team up with me. That happens when we unite with the Spirit. To be open to the mind, to the Spirit makes a difference. I think most of us have known somebody who we looked at and said they really don't have any spirit. Or to know a team and said they just don't have any spirit. They really can't win. They have no get up and go. They're down in the mouth. They don't think about anything positive. Like I said, when I think about the mind, I like to look at Schuller and Norman Vincent Peale. There's a story that Schuller writes, or that Peale writes in one of his books, that he's in New York, and he's in a cab with 2 of his good friends, and they're sitting in the back seat of the cab. And they greet the cab driver very nicely, and they ask him some questions so that they can involve him in a conversation. And his responses were really glum and gloomy. And he was really down-pressed. The 2 men sitting with Peale referred to him as Dr. Peale. And of course, he's got many PhDs that he's been awarded over the years. And that when they called him doctor, the driver of the cab thought he was a medical doctor. And so he thought, well, maybe he could get some question answered about his own self. And he told Peale about his aches and his pains and about his miserable existence. And then Peale listened to him as he talked as they were driving along in the streets of New York. And he told the cab driver he has cyclosclerosis. And of course, this really hit this cab driver. What kind of word is that? And he almost crashed the cab. He was so concerned about the seriousness of his ailment that Peale said. And he said to Peale, he says, what's that? Peale answered, you may have heard of articulosis. And he says, yes. He said, what's that? He says, articulosis is the hardening of the arteries. Sclerosis means the hardening. And he said to the cab driver, your problem is hardening of your mind, your thoughts, and your attitudes. The loss of the flexibility of the Spirit within your life. And then they told him why sclerosis was such a terrible disease. And then Peel told him, he says, I'm not a physical doctor. I'm a person who specializes in the state of mind and the condition of the spirit of human beings. And as they ended their cab drive, Peel asked for this man's address. And he gave him his address and he said, I'm going to send you my book. And he left his card in that with his address of his office. Some weeks later, this cab driver went to the office of Dr. Norman Vincent Peel and told him that my sclerosis has gotten much better over the time. When I got my thinking straightened out, how different my attitude was in life, and he thanked him. The bottom line, they had the mindset on important objectives to set on the Spirit. If you have your mindset on the Spirit, depending upon God to help you direct your decisions in life, it makes a difference. And you can have, as Paul writes later on, the fruits of the Spirit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. These can be yours if we set our mind on the Spirit. So focusing on the Spirit of God directing us. What our mindset is makes an awful lot of difference. So have your mindset on the Spirit. And you have the bulletin, most of you, in the front page of that, and most of you got a small copy of that. My wife has on her computer and stuff all kinds of little tabs telling her things that you ought to focus on as far as the day is concerned. So I would suggest to you, maybe take that bulletin home, cut that out and paste it on your mirror. So when you get up in the morning, you can look at that and you can see to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. So it is.